Hey friends, today we will talk about developers' most favorite topic, testing time end to end. And in my experience, there are two very common problems that are hard to get right. The first one is applications that show time depending on the user's local time zone. That's tricky to test, isn't it? And the other one are applications that include long-running timers that, for example, log the user out after 15, 20, or 30 minutes. How should you test these two scenarios end to end? Playwright makes it fairly easy, and in this video I will show you how. Let's go! Here we are in Playwright's UI mode, and as you see, I already prepared two spec files to show you how you can control time using Playwright. Let's run the first one. There's not much going on. Playwright navigates to time zone HTML, which I have running locally, and then it checks that this date here is showing Friday, October the 25th at 4 p.m. The tricky thing here now is that this date is stored in UTC and it renders here with a 2-hour offset because I'm in Berlin, Germany right now. So when the test runs from a different time zone, this will most likely break. Let's make our test case time zone aware. When we look at the spec file, it defines a test group using test describe, and here we have this test case that only holds 2 instructions. And to define what time zone this assertion should work with, we can go ahead and we can define test use, and now we can set a time zone ID, which in our case should be Europe Berlin. And this doesn't change the result of our test case, but now that we know how to set time zones, we can go ahead and define more time zones that we want to test. Here we have 3 different time zones. So we have Berlin, we have New York City, and we have Sydney, Australia, their time zone ID, and additionally, the times that we know are correct with the correct offsets that we expect the site to display. And because everything is stored in an array, we can use by far one of my most favorite Playwright test runner features. We can iterate over our time zones, and we can set up our test group and test suites by moving everything into a quick loop. So when we now iterate over time zones, we can get all the information that we need here by quickly destructuring it. So we want to use the name, the time zone ID, and the expected time. So let's define these tests from, here we go with name. Here we have time zone ID, so I don't have to do this. So a shorthand will do. And now for our web first assertion to have text, we can go in and we can say that we want to have expected time here. So with these quick changes, we just tripled our test case, but we're now covering multiple time zones in a single test file. And when we head back to UI mode, here we have already our 3 tests. And when we run all 3, we will see that hopefully they are all passing. But now we have here October 25, 4 p.m. We have October 25, 10 a.m. And we have October 26, 1 a.m. for all the different time zones. And if you now wonder if you can also set a time zone on your entire Playwright project, of course you can. Whenever you use test use in your spec files, you can also go ahead and define the same configuration in your Playwright project settings in your Playwright config. So when it comes to developing and testing time zone dependent information, Playwright makes it fairly easy for us, and I love that. But let's move on. Here we have another tricky example. This site here includes a button that when I click it, starts a timer that is running 5 minutes. And after these 5 minutes, this message will disappear and this button will then be enabled again. How should we test this? Should our end-to-end test now wait for 5 minutes? I don't think so. With the release of Playwright 1.45, there's now a new API available, the clock API, that allows us to manage time and control what's going on with all these JavaScript timers. So let's bring it in. Here we have another test case that already navigates to this application that holds our timer. It clicks the button, start session, then it checks that this button is disabled. And I already prepared a locator so that we can check the remaining time of our running timer. If we now want to avoid waiting all these 5 minutes, we can go ahead and before we navigate to this application, we can say wait page clock. And here we can say that we want to install all this new Playwright clock functionality. And Playwright will then go ahead and override all the time-dependent JavaScript functions that are running in the current context so that you can control them. And this now means that if we want to test the timer and that it's working correctly, we can now go ahead and we can say page clock, and then we can say fast forward, and let's just jump forward 60 seconds here. 60 seconds after we clicked our button, we expect our time display to have a value that is something around 3 minutes and 50 something seconds. But why am I using a regular expression here? First of all, JavaScript timers aren't very accurate because this is how the JavaScript event loop works. And second of all, when I prepared this code for this video, I found that sometimes the timers were somehow out of sync. And for my example here of this random timer on the demo page, I'm fine with matching 3 minutes 58, 57, 59 seconds as long as the timer works properly. It's not the exact seconds that matters to me, but rather that the timer is running and that 1 minute has passed. So let's move on and add another time jump. So I will call again wait page clock, and we will forward this time the remaining 4 minutes. And at this stage, we expect time display to be hidden and our button should then be enabled again. To be enabled. Here we go. Let's head over to UI mode to see if it works. Let's close our control time zones spec file, and here we have our control time test. So let's hit play. And here we go. This was super quick because we control time. And when we now inspect the DOM snapshots, we see here page go to, we have the button, then it has been clicked. Now we have a timer here with 4:59. Here we have 3:59. And here session is over, our remaining time disappeared and the button is enabled again. So this feature that usually takes 5 minutes was just tested in 500 milliseconds. And I think this is super cool. So whenever your application does something with timeouts or intervals, definitely check out the new clock API, and there are more things to discover and handle time. And that's all I have for you today. We fiddled with time zones and we installed and controlled fake timers in Playwright. If you liked this video, make sure to check out our Playwright tips playlist here on YouTube. We already have over 40 videos and we are not gonna stop. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them below because I read all the comments and I love publishing follow-up videos answering all these questions. And that's it. I will see you the next time when we talk about Playwright, synthetic monitoring with Checkly, or generally shipping good stuff for the web. I will see you soon.